Hello everyone. I'll introduce myself first before beginning the lecture for today. I'm going to talk about social identity, which is a new, theory in Iraq. It's a theory about language acquisition, and it's the new trend in the United States nowadays. So my name is Dr. Fatima. I've got my PhD from the United States, from the University of Wyoming. And of course, many of you will not know where is Wyoming. So it's located to the south of Montana and north of Colorado. Enough about me. So now I'm going to discuss the topic for today. The study that I investigated social identity with is called Identity Formation and English Learning in Contemporary Iraq. Before getting into the topic of the study itself, let me introduce the term social identity. As you know, any human being has identity, and in fact, it's not only one identity. However, any human being has several identities. How? For example, if I take myself, I am an instructor, a sister, a daughter, and several other identities. I can act according to these identities in a different way. For example, at home, when I talk to my parents, when I talk to, let's start with my parents first. So the way I talk to my parents is different from the way I talk to my sister. And the way I talk to my sister is different from the way I talk to my brother. The way I talk to my family is different from the way I talk to my students. And the way I talk to my students is different from the way I talk to my boss, for example, etc. So these identities shape our lives. Now, the topic of social identity is very important in the way that we tackle the target language and the way we teach English to our students, because it's a way of forming their identity. Now we are adding another identity to our students. That's why it's a very important topic or object in the whole process of learning teaching. Another thing about social identity that you should know is that it's a feeling of belonging. Well, the way I explained it, it's a simple way of explaining identity. The other professional way is that it's a term that explains how one feels that he belongs to a certain group in the community. For example, if we take athletics, a football player, let's say, or soccer player, he feels that he belongs to the team. So now in terms of language, that will affect the language he uses in the same way as I explained the several identities that we have in our families, in our jobs. So the language that we use differs based on the community in which we act in. So the player, the language he is using is different from the language when he goes shopping, for example, or when he goes to his family. And how can we understand that? Because if I go to the football team, for example, sometimes I might not understand a term that they are going to use, and we call it a technical term or a professional term. Same thing, if I'm talking by phone to one of my colleagues and my mother listens to me or hears me, then she might not understand some of the terms I use because they are technical terms. And that is part of our identity again. So here, it refers, then we can conclude that social identity, it belongs to the dynamic context bound to phenomena that helps people understand their possibilities for the future. This is the importance of social identity. Because if I grasp the importance of the identity that I have, then I can form the way I act. My identity as a sister forms the way I talk to my sister, then my expectations will be formed for the future. What do I expect from myself as a sister? Again, for the student, if he understands the identity he's getting from learning English as a target language or as a foreign language, then he can understand the expectations for the future. What is he going to do with this language? Is it for professional purposes? Is it for spending time reading? Is it to understand another culture, etc., etc.? Now, coming to the teaching process, what do we need? First of all, we should understand all of the above, all the explanation about social identity. Very important to know that our role is not an easy role as instructors, because we play a vital role in creating an identity for our students. So, in addition to what we do, the curriculum plays a role too in forming this personality or this identity, since the curriculum is the medium for teachers to help students construct their second identity. We call it the second identity because the mother tongue is number one. Native language is number one. So all of us as Arabic speakers, we have a first Arabic speaker's identity, and it forms our way of using Arabic language. So when we learn a language, another language, then we are adding a second identity. If, for example, let me clarify on this point. If a Kurdish student, since Kurdish language, their native language, their mother tongue, it's their mother tongue, so it will be number one. So they have an identity, or that student, the Kurdish student, he has an identity as a Kurdish language speaker. Second language, his second language will be Arabic. Then his second identity will be Arabic. So he'll be number two, an identity as an Arabic speaker. Then when he learns English, that will be his third identity, not the second. So coming back to the idea, we are adding another identity to our students, and we need the curriculum to help us. How? So by using authentic materials, because when we use authentic materials, it means that we are bringing the whole culture and the way the English-speaking communities use the language and bring it we call it in a plate for our students to use it. Then he'll grasp all the needed items in order to formulate his new identity. Again, language, as I said, and I talked a lot about language, so it's an important, because identity is not only consisting of language itself, no, there are other things, but language is an important block in this new construction. It means that language learning can be a way of retaining one's identity or a threat to it. How? Let me explain it by a story that happened to me when I was an undergraduate student. Well, because since childhood I was fascinated about the culture of the West and the way they use language. So I started, and that came to me by reading the fiction, stories, whatever I find about these cultures. So all of this made me accept that there are other cultures, and my case might be different, but still. So I know that they have different traditions. I like to learn about them, but they do not affect me because I have my identity, it's safe. And then I'm curious to know whatever other people are doing. When I was in the fourth stage in college, we started studying novels earlier, but still the novel of the fourth year, it was special because it has such sensitive issues in our culture. It's the, how can I explain it? It's the odd relationship between a son and a mother. So in that, and plus, there are other things. For example, drinking wine, which is unacceptable in our culture. So we understand that those cultures, the West especially, they have all these odd things. I mean, it will be nonsense if we isolate ourselves from other communities just because they are different. No, it's very important that we understand what they are doing in order to understand the world outside, the surroundings of our country or our worlds, okay? It doesn't matter that we know about them because, if we have our traditions, we have our cultures, they are safe, so it will not affect us if we know about others. It will not mean that we'll do the wrong things. that thing did not happen in my classroom for the novel. The instructor, instead of explaining the novel, explaining the tradition, how people act, no, he started criticizing them. And that acts as a threat to language learning. So instead of encouraging the students to understand the differences in those cultures, on the contrary, because there are people just like me who accept others and are curious to know about others, but there are other students who might be have limited minds. It's not limited minds, but limited thinking maybe, that they do not accept anything which is very different from their traditions. Let me say it in another way. Maybe they will not feel safe going outside their comfort zone. So that instructor, he pushed them in order to get outside the safe zone or comfort zone. And the contrary happens, because they went inside, shrank inside in their shell, and then they'll stop their will in order to learn about that culture. That is a threat. The other thing is that it may retains one's identity if that instructor said that we have different traditions, different religions, different people, and if he wanted to relate it to the Holy Quran, he can say we have a verse that encourages all peoples to get to know each other, and that will help the world get better. Then students might be open-minded in order to get other information about other cultures. Anyway, that's just a story, an example to exemplify this point. So social identity or the language learning can be a way of retaining one's identity or a threat to it. Now, one of the most important ideas of social identity is investment. All the process that I talked about learning, teaching, our role as instructors is that we invest. We have something, it's language learning, and we are investing in our students. If we help them in the right way, if we create the social identity we aim for as speakers of the target language, then we'll create the social identity that will help our students be different persons in the future. If they learn, they might be successful translators, successful teachers, or they can communicate with other countries or other people from other countries, etc. So social identity is a way of saying who I am, and that is the most important thing that we should encourage our students to understand. So we are empowering them with language. We are giving them the right thing. So teachers in Iraq, specifically nowadays, modern era in Iraq, we should understand that, because we are giving something precious to our students. Now, the problem of, it's not a problem. When I wrote this study, it was a real problem because we were at the beginning of getting technology inside classrooms. But what I've seen since I got back from the United States, I've seen that there is a promising future about technology and technology use in Iraqi classrooms. But still, we need such points, because in modern Iraq, technology is new, and most of the teachers, they are not very familiar with using technology in classrooms. We still prefer the traditional way of teaching. But based on the study that I've conducted in 2017-18, I interviewed some of the instructors in Iraqi universities, and the views that I'm explaining now, they are based on their answers for the interview. So they stated, my sample stated that the previous EFL or English language experience, their experience in learning language, it affects the way they teach now. And it happened also to me when I was a teacher. I mean, before getting my PhD. So the way that they receive their knowledge about language, they use it again in order to give back, to teach students. It's true, especially for newly appointed teachers. I mean, it's not bad to relate to the way that you received your knowledge, but still you have to update. You have to use new things. So it's correct that myself, I used the old way, or I used the old knowledge that I've got from my instructors, but then by experience, day by day and year by year, I see that what is working for my students, what is not working with my students, and then I start to update, reflect on my way of teaching. So the way that my sample answer, they said, traditional way, the way that we got the knowledge about the target language, we see that it's effective with our students. That's why we apply it in our instruction nowadays. So the previous experience provides solid base, solid foundation in the methodological practices of Iraqi instructors in Iraqi universities. However, nowadays, especially nowadays, there is a urgent need to incorporate other methods of teaching. Well, I'm not against traditional ways of teaching. They are very effective, especially in our environment in Iraq, but it's good to use and it's also stated by one of the participants. She said, I think the eclectic approach is the most effective one. And by eclectic, I mean using a mixture of all methods of teaching. Traditional way of teaching, audiolingual approach, the direct method, the communicative language approach, all of these methods, we use it as a mixture, and then we provide our lesson, which goes side by side, parallel to the various learning styles that students have. And it's part of the effectiveness of this way, the eclectic approach, which parallel the language learners, the language learning styles, is because every student is different from the other. So not all people are the same. So, which means that not all people understand the lesson in the same way. For me, for example, I'm a visual learner. It doesn't mean that I don't understand anything other than seeing things, diagrams and photos, etc. No. But the visual thing, the visual learning style, for me, it exceeds other ways of learning. So my hearing way, the audio learning style, it works very well for me, but still the visual one, it comes number one. So we have students who are visual learners. We have students who understand well by listening, just listening. We have students who understand by doing things, so we have to keep them busy. So when we use a mixture of all of these things, then we'll have a very effective and successful language lesson. It's not only for language lessons. I mean, in any specialty, if we use all mixture of all of these things, we'll have a very effective, productive lesson. Now, what do we need in order to improve the language teaching learning process? Talking about all of these things, I mean, for me also, I did get the idea of social identity by studying a lot for my PhD, from meeting with other peers when I went to conferences. So when meeting with other students, candidates when I was in the United States. So the important thing is that, number one, we need trainings, of course, which are available, I think. Even if you cannot attend now, you can go online and enroll in several of the free courses or whatever. Number two, we have, which is very, very important, we need to share our best practices. It's very important that teachers form a community and then start peer reviewing, or consulting or whatever. I know that we have the TESOL organization, which is a huge network of English language teachers, but still because of the COVID-19, I participated in one of the big conferences of TESOL in the United States, Now, I don't think it's possible to go person to person because it's very useful, but still, they have an online site and you can share practices, or at least you can look. There are lesson plans available, there are experiences shared. We need the same thing in Iraq, maybe not with native speakers. We need to meet regularly with our peers, explain what challenges do we face in classroom, what challenges do we face in administrative level, or in the classroom, or any other issue related to teaching or learning, maybe problems that we have students have faced problems in learning this aspect in particular. What do you suggest? So this is one of the or 2 points that we need to do. Other things which I stated earlier, we need to use a mixture of methods of teaching. And I'll not elaborate on this point because I used it a lot previously. So I'll end this presentation for now, and hopefully I'll come back to you with a different topic and we talk again about different theory of language learning. Thank you very much.